Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we're having a look at another battalion box set, only in this case we're not. Why? Because it is the turn of the Kingdom of Bretonia, and whilst they don't get a battalion box set, what they do get is one of the original core sets which were launched at the time the game was released. So you get a little bit of different stuff compared to a normal battalion box set. What do I mean by this? Well, a battalion box set will mostly be core stuff, and it will be then come with either 2 picks from the special or a single rare pick, and that's all you get. In the core sets, you've got characters, you've got a slightly different array of models, and you've got extra things you would need for playing the game. So let us start with those extra bits. What is it that you get for your £160 if you're paying recommended retail price direct to Games Workshop? Well, in the extras, let's start with a copy of the Old World rulebook. Now, if you are a new player to the game, this is absolutely something you are going to need. It costs £44 recommended retail. Now, if you're a returning experienced player who's maybe already dived into the game, you've got other factions already, are you going to want a second copy of the rulebook? Probably not. Are they going to be easy to shift? Probably not. However, one thing I have seen is, well, actually 2 things that I've seen. One is rulebooks get battered. They're hardback. The spines can be a little bit fragile when they're used quite heavily, so you might not expect it to necessarily last a full edition of the game. Additionally, there's something else you can bear in mind, which is if you printing out all the various FAQs, erratas, etc., and scale them correctly, you can glue those into your main rulebook, so you've still got a one-stop shop for all of the rules that you need. So it's something that could be borne in mind. You then get your construction guide, fair enough, a reference sheet, some transfers, 26-sided dice, and let's face it, more dice, everyone needs dice, don't they? More the merrier. You get a 6-sided scatter dice. Now, I find this actually quite odd that you only get a scatter dice and you don't get an artillery dice. Because realistically, if you're using one, you're highly likely to need both. If you're using any form of artillery, there's probably an artillery dice involved. So it did make artillery dice a little bit rare at the start of the game. If you're looking for dice, why not just provide both? I now understood that decision, but there you go. What else do you get? You get 2 of the red plastic measuring sticks, the famous whippy sticks. Let's face it, they don't really have much point. You might as well spend a few pence, get yourself a tape measure. And then you get 3 weapon templates. You're going to need these as well if you are brand new, certainly, because there's a lot of spells plus artillery, etc., breath attacks, all using templates. So they're a useful thing to have in a core set where you're getting someone into the game. Returning veterans, again, probably have these, but duplicates, let's face it, how many times have you played on a game where there's some spells going off, there's artillery firing, and actually you need multiple templates dotted around the table? So overall, I think there is some use in them. Let's turn our attention now to the models. What is it that you get? Well, first of all, you get a character. So this is what marks this box set as completely different. Apart from the stuff I've just said, models wise, what marks it as different from the battalion box set? You get a Lord of Bretonia on a Royal Pegasus. Now, before the errata, let's face it, the Lord of Bretonia on a Royal Pegasus, tricked out with the right magic items, absolute beast, able to deal with whole units pretty much by itself. It's got good anti-dragging capabilities, it's quick, it's mobile, it can really, really mess people up. Post errata, yes, this is more expensive, but I think it still deserves a place of honour when it comes to the armies of Bretonia. I think you're still going to see these used quite a lot because they're still quick. They can still make an absolute mess of something if they get a charge in and get it right. And they still offer good anti-dragon. Dragons, I think, they're not going to be going away. Now, it may be that we're having to use Lord of Bretonians a little bit more intelligently. We can't just rely on them to hoover up the enemy forces in the way that maybe we could do before, but they're still going to be with the big blob of their mates. They're still going to be absolutely devastating, so really worth it, I think, for any Bretonia player. Next up, well, we've got 12 Knights of the Realm. Now, these aren't perhaps the best heavy cavalry in the game, but you've got to take some of them and they're pretty useful. Getting a set of 12 of them, well, that gives you 2 units of 6, both of which forming a nice lance formation. By knight standards, they're pretty dashed quick, and the lance formation gives them a really good advantage because they take up less room. Everything on the flank of the lance counts as being in base-to-base contact with their opponents, where another unit has to actually in base-to-base contact. What this means is you can get a lance formation of knights in, and then in the space they would have taken up, something else can also slot in, meaning you get a lot more attacks coming down a very narrow space. So I think there is value there to be had as well. The role of the knight, I think it has changed a little bit with the 1.5 of its known errata, but I don't think heavy cavalry is really going anywhere. I've just actually done a video on this. When rules like first charge are taken into account, these boys will be able to mess up big blocks of infantry and drive them back. They probably want to be doing this in tandem with other things or piggybacking so that they're constantly counting being on the charge or getting an actual charge in against blocks of infantry to drive them back and get their flanks protected, etc. But a bunch of charging knights with lances, they're still able to do a heck of a lot of damage, and they are, of course, when we're talking Bretonia, what this army is all about from a visual perspective. It is all about the knights. Talking about knights, we're also getting 3 of the Bretonnian Pegasus Knights. Now, these have gone up in cost. Pre-errata, you were looking at loads and loads of Peg Knights. They would be as many of them as you could physically get into an army a lot of the time. They'd be babysitting the Lord of Bretonia on Royal Pegasus and a standard bearer on Royal Pegasus. Do I think we will see as many of them? No, I don't. I think we will see the numbers trimmed down. Maybe 1 unit or 4 units of 4. We're not going to be seeing maxed out units flying around all over the board. They're also a little bit harder to hide because now to make a charge, half a unit of skirmishers, of which these are, need to be able to see their target. You can't just be peeking around the edge of something, making it difficult to get counterattacks in or shots in, whatever it may be, before they can launch their attack. But they are still really going to be useful. They can bounce up the board, going from bit of terrain to bit of terrain. They can threaten flanks, war machines, whatever it is that you want, and work as an really assistance as a delivery for the Royal Pegasus Lord. They're still going to be quite dangerous to deal with. They're going to suck up a lot of attention, while other units on the battlefield can get on with doing whatever it is they want. Finally, we're turning our attention in the box to the peasantry. Pre-errata, I think these would count with as really being a bit of a tax. You had to have a unit of peasants in your force. So you'd often see a minimum size unit of bowmen, for example. But they now benefit from the fact that infantry are better when it comes to Warhammer, the old world. You can use your bowmen to protect your baggage train. They've got good range, outranging a lot of bows, because I think they've got a 30-inch bow that you can give them the defensive stakes if they're not going to be going anywhere, and they can just sit back, plinking away with their strength 3 shots. You're not expecting a lot of them, but they are going to be able to be a nuisance factor, so hold your baggage train hopefully at the end of the game for those 100 points. Potentially pretty useful. And then there's the Bretonnian men-at-arms. Now, it's a bit of a weird name for them, because men-at-arms historically were heavy cavalry, a bit like knights but without the knighthood. This really, we're talking about peasant infantry with a hand weapon, a shield, and a polearm. So the polearms can account as pretty much spears or halberds. It's important, however, that they don't enjoy the full rules for those two weapons, because they are technically different. However, 36 Bretonnian men-at-arms, they can be put into a block with horde, warband. I think they've got shield. They are actually, for really dirt cheap infantry, really, really annoying. They're hard to get rid of. They can hunker down really nicely. And they ask your opponent a very interesting and challenging question. What are you going to do about them? Because they're going to take quite a bit of battering away at in order to make them go away. You're going to have to commit to it. But if you're committing to this block of men-at-arms stood on an objective, whatever it is they may be doing, you're not focusing on the Royal Pegasus, on the Pegasus Knights, on the heavy cavalry sweeping round your flanks. So do you deal with those threats and let the Bretonnian player sit there going 30, 60, 90, 120 points and keeping the scoreboard pressure ticking over? Or, or do you deal with that and then have your flanks harassed by heavy hitting units? Where is the target of choice? I think this very much will depend on what you've got in your force. Where are you looking to pick up your points from? Are you able to compete on the objectives with your infantry blocks, for example? Are you able to put enough shots in them quickly that weakens their effective enough that you can let smaller, less important units deal with it going forward? There's question marks here. I've always been a big fan of the Bretonnian men-at-arms. I think they offer really great value for their points cost. And as I say, they're a proper pain. So where is it that I sit when it comes to this set? I think if you are brand new to the game and you really do get value out of the rule book, out of the dice, etc., etc., and you want to, obviously, if you want to play Bretonnians, if you don't want to play Bretonnians, the set is pointless. But yeah, I think overall this offers a really good introduction to A, the game, and B, the army. You get a lot of the things you will absolutely want in your army. You get the lords, you get the knights. You need to take peasants, so you've got peasants, and you've got peg knights. You'll probably want more of those too. And all of this totals out to 1,250 point army, which is a good size game to be starting off at. I think post errata, the number of peasants you get between the men-at-arms and the peasant bowmen, they've increased in value and usefulness. You probably won't be using 60 infantry on the table at once between the men-at-arms and the bowmen, but it gives you options around your list building. It allows you to tinker with how you go about it. Are you going purely defensively, holding your back line, looking for games defending a baggage cart, or are you going to be pushing the centre? You probably need to think around how you're doing both, depending on whether you know what sort of game you're always going to be playing or not. So yeah, I think overall, if you are a new player, this has a load of value. If you are new to the faction, again, I think there's plenty of value here in this box set. It gives you a real blend of things that you will want to use from some time or the other. and then consider how you want to beef that out. So yeah, I think a really good set. Even if there were, and let's face it, I think it's something I do have to mention, when the game was first released, the quality of control of this box set was known not to be brilliant, and that some of the horses' heads were really badly malformed. Now, Games Workshop does have a pretty good customer service team, but that does require you to buy direct from them most of the time anyway. So is that an encouragement, knowing that it's 160 quid, you're going to need horses' heads, etc., that you buy direct? Because if you're looking at 10-20% off, which you can easily obtain for most Games Workshop products that are available through local gaming stores, online, etc., that marks a significant chunk of change. But that is obviously for you to decide how you get your hands on it, should you choose to make the purchase. So that aside, what is it you think around this box set? Do let me know. Do you think it's useful? Do you think it's got value? I certainly do. If you've liked this video and others like it, do consider a like and subscribe. It is the best way, as always, of supporting a small channel such as this one, and to give you a heads up on when the latest content is released. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for listening. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.